Hey guys, this is Coach Pur. In this video, I'm going to share my n=1 experiment into whether or not mewing actually works. Can an adult, I was 27 years old at the time when I started my experiment, can a 27-year-old male still grow their maxilla just by mewing? And I'm sure you've stumbled into this corner of YouTube because you, just like me, might have a little bit deficient jaws. I have very deficient maxilla, meaning my top jaw. So when I stumbled on this corner of the internet and I saw all these amazing before-after photos of people's mewing progress in the internet, I was very, very excited. But you know, there's always a bit of skepticism. You never know, because people are very good at photoshopping these days. And you actually never saw any kind of legitimate x-rays or any kind of legitimate records of have you actually been able to grow your jaws. So that's exactly what I did, and that's exactly what I'm going to present to you in this video. First of all, we should cover what is actually mewing. What is it? So mewing is specifically holding the tongue on the roof of the mouth. So more specifically, it is that when you say the letter N and your tongue goes on the roof of the mouth, you say N, the tip of the tongue goes right there. So if this is your front teeth, this is the roof of the mouth. When you say N, the tip of the tongue goes right there. From there, you need to suction the rest of the tongue against the roof of the mouth, and you need to carpet the whole roof of the mouth with the tongue. From there, you're going to apply slight pressure against the roof of the palate. And this is known as mewing. And what's funny about mewing is that when you talk to orthodontists, you talk to dentists, you talk to orofacial myologists, and you ask them, where should I keep my tongue? They're going to tell you exactly that. They're going to tell you that the proper tongue posture is exactly that. You should have the roof of the tongue covered with the tongue. And the reason for that is that it has a massive impact on your ability to breathe through your nose. So if this is your back of your airway right here, this is the roof of your mouth. You can see this is your nose, and this is your nasal cavity here, and this is the back of the airway right there, and this is your tongue. So when your tongue is on the roof of the mouth, the airway space right here remains open. But if the tongue is flat on the floor of the mouth, the tongue, the soft palate, and the hyoid bone all move lower into the airway, and that's going to reduce the amount of airway space that you have available to breathe. So the moment that you're able to put your tongue onto the roof of the mouth, in that instant, you're going to improve your ability to breathe through your nose. And this is especially important at nighttime, because what ends up happening at nighttime is that if that tongue collapses into the airway and if it's sitting lower in the throat, it's going to increase the chances of that airway narrowing, and that's going to lead into snoring and then possibly even complete airway collapses, which is called obstructive sleep apnea. So the reason why these mewing claims are a little bit controversial is that the scientific consensus at this point in time is that we stop growing our maxilla, our top jaw, when we're about 7 years old, give or take 1 or 2 years. And the mandible, the lower jaw, continues to grow until your late teens. So these claims that adults are able to grow their jaws just by holding their tongue on the roof of the mouth is very, very interesting, and it flies directly in the face of the scientific consensus. So that's why I seeked out a dentist, an orofacial myofunctional dentist and orthodontist who could actually help me take very accurate records. So we took a bunch of photos, we actually did an x-ray from the side of my head to actually quantify whether or not I'm able to change the shape of my face and whether or not I'm actually able to push my maxilla forwards with mewing. And before I show you the results, I want to share with you one secret. I actually didn't just mew, but after I did my records, I actually did a course in orofacial myofunctional training. And I not only, held my tongue in the correct posture, but I also trained the muscles of my face. I also trained my tongue with more specific exercises, and I also trained the muscles of my upper airways. And the benefit of that is that it can reduce the chances of obstructive sleep apnea and snoring happening at nighttime, because one, your tongue is less likely to collapse into the airway when it's stronger and it's in the correct position, and number two is that the muscles that actually make up your upper airways are more resistant for airway collapses to take place in the first place. So without further ado, let's have a look at the results that I was able to get from 1 year of mewing and orofacial myofunctional training. And while I pull up the records, could you please do me a favor and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and put a comment below so that other people who are also looking for this information can find it easily from the corners of the internet. Okay, so here we go. Let's take a look at these photos first before we go and take a look at the x-rays and the x-ray analysis. So the photos on the left are taken on the 27th of October 2020 and on the right 10th of December 2021, so it's a little bit over 12 months, 13 months. The other thing we can see straight off the bat, unfortunately, I do not have the same amount of facial hair. I actually had more hair on my face here in the first photos, and also I have more hair on my head on the second photo. And the reason for that is that actually this haircut on the left, it's made credit by my girlfriend because it was in the middle of lockdown here in Melbourne. Yeah, it's a great haircut. Oh, I hope she never sees this video. Anyways, do I look different? Maybe. I mean, maybe. I think so. It's quite hard to put my finger on it, what exactly it is, but I think that there is a difference right here, somewhere around the eyes. Like the eyes look a little bit healthier, and just this area here looks a little bit different. It looks like there's a little bit more structure in the face. So here with the smile, you can clearly see the masterwork of a dentist / orthodontist from back in my childhood in Finland, because you can see that they've actually extracted teeth from my mouth, and I actually have less teeth on my top upper row than I have on my lower row. And this is a significant problem because one, my maxilla was deficient in the first place, and that was the cause why my mom took me to the orthodontist, because I was having a posterior crossbite. But two, now they actually took some teeth away from my mouth, and yes, it was easier to make my smile look nice back then, but now there was even less mass in my mouth to encourage my jaws to grow forwards and outwards. And now I'm left with this really deficient maxilla. And that then leads into like the reason why I got into this thing in the first place is because when you have a deficient maxilla, you have a smaller mouth. But my tongue comes as a stock standard size, as a, you know, from evolution. What is the size of a normal Finnish man? And yeah, it's a big tongue, you know, in there. And now I just have less airway space, and I have less space in my tongue I have less space in my mouth for my tongue, and because of that, it's very easy for my tongue to collapse into the airway, especially when I sleep. Again, here, the front 45, I mean, I don't know, does it look that different? I think it does look a little bit different around here once again. It just looks like there's a little bit more structure in the face around this area here. Again, I wish that I had the same amount of facial hair so you could actually see the neck a little bit better. From the side, I don't know, like it's really hard to tell. It does look like my tongue definitely is sitting on the lower posture here, whereas right here you can actually see that the angle here is a little bit more acute, and the Adam's apple is a little bit more prominent. That's a sign that the tongue is actually now on the roof of the mouth there. On the other side, 45, I mean, the jaw kind of does look a little bit more defined, and it just looks like there's more structure in the face, but it's just really hard to tell actually. And I just really can't quite put my finger on it, what the difference is, but I do think that somehow I look better on the right side, but I just don't know what it is that's creating that. Then the side, again, I think it does look a little bit different, especially if you look around here. It looks like as if there's more structure in the face on the right side here than it is on the left side. I do think that I'd look a little bit different here on the right side. I don't know, it's hard to tell. Please help me out. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Do you think that I actually look any different in the right side than I do on the left side? It can be very valuable to get someone else's eyes and get someone else's opinion. Thank you so much for that. So now we get into the X-rays. When you have a really quick look at it, looks pretty much the same. Looks pretty much the same from left to right. And you can really clearly see now how that maxilla, that upper jaw, is just way behind from where it should actually be. Like it should be somewhere around here. The mandible should be somewhere around here, slightly further back, and that's what would be considered optimal. But you can clearly see that that maxilla is nowhere near where it should be. And I actually have this bite here that's pretty inefficient. Some of these teeth aren't even touching properly. The only difference that the dentist who did the tracing for me was able to identify is that when you look at this photo, you can see that bit of black space right there. Apparently that's air traveling through the back of the tongue. Whereas here, there's none of that black matter or black space at all. And that just tells that I was able to hold my tongue better on the roof of the mouth on the moment when this X-ray was taken on the right side than on the left side. And finally, we have a Jefferson analysis of the X-rays. So in the Jefferson analysis, there are specific landmarks that are found from the X-rays, and then when we compare these landmarks and their position between these photos, we can actually see whether or not these bones have moved. So on the left side, we had maxilla distance minus 6.5 millimeters, means that the maxilla is 6.5 millimeters behind from where it should be compared to what's optimal. Mandible distance is 8.3, meaning that the mandible is 8.3 millimeters too far forward. What about on the second scan? The maxilla distance is now minus 5.9, so it's actually, based on this, it would have moved forward 0.6 millimeters, and the mandible is only 7.2 millimeters too far forward. So now the mandible would have actually moved backwards 1.1 millimeters. And that sounds pretty exciting. Does that mean that I've actually grown my jaw 0.6 millimeters forwards? Unfortunately, one of the first things that Richard Hu, who's the dentist, who's a legitimate dentist from Myofocus here in Melbourne, one of the first things he pointed out that unfortunately my head position is actually a little bit different. So if you look at the photos closely, you can see that on this left scan, the head is in a slight downward angle, whereas on the right side, it's a little bit more straight forwards. The other thing is that the difference between these scans is not just statistically that significant. So unfortunately, even though I would love to say that I was able to grow my maxilla 0.6 millimeters, unfortunately, I'm not able to say that. It looks like scientific consensus has scored a tick, and this corner of the internet and all the before-after photos that you see in the internet might deserve a bit of a pinch of salt that I hope that you take with you from now on. Does all this mean that the effort and the time that I've invested into mewing and orofacial myofunctional training, has it been a waste of time? Absolutely not. What I've actually done is that I've combined all what I've spoken about with breathing retraining by using the principles and the exercise that I learned from becoming an oxygen advantage breathing instructor. I've used those to improve the quality of my breathing both during the day and at nighttime, and has had an absolutely life-changing impact on the way that I feel, on the way that I operate both mentally and physically, because my sleep quality has gone through the roof now that I'm always breathing through my nose, and because of the orofacial training, my tongue is less likely to collapse into the airway, and the airway muscles themselves are more able to resist airway collapses from taking place in the first place. I've put all the breathing exercises and the orofacial myofunctional training exercises into a single resource with comprehensive instructional videos and also specific training programs to follow that last for 8 weeks. And this is progressive in nature, so I've applied some of the principles of strength and conditioning and progressive overload in there as well. You can find that resource from coachpuru.com/breathing foundations. If you found this video useful and you know of anyone else who's absolutely raving about mewing or is a little bit skeptical about whether or not it actually works, would you please do me a favor and send this video their way so that they can benefit from it as well. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video. This is Coach Puru. Let's do this.